Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayeti Rudrayatte Takshinam Mukham Tenamam Pahi Nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Subject today is All the World's a Stage. As all of you have, it's such a well-known line from Shakespeare's, As You Like It. And so that's been the main inspiration behind the title. The first four lines, as it goes, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. So the comparison of the world to a stage and all of us as mere actors was not invented by Shakespeare. We see that this occurs in art and literature in many different forms, even before Shakespeare was born. So in the Renaissance humanist named Erasmus, in his book, The Praise of Folly, he asks, "For what else is the life of man but a kind of play in which men in various costumes perform until the director motions them off the stage?" So this division of human life into different stages has been a running motive throughout history. The number of stages, of course, varied, and sometimes it was 3, sometimes it was 4. Those are the most common numbers among ancient writers, especially even in Aristotle. But the division in Indian texts, of course, the most common way they spoke about the division in life into 4 stages. The first was the student stage. They call it each stage was called an ashrama. And so the student stage was called the brahmacharya ashrama. Then the next stage, when we start a family, the family stage was called the grihastha ashrama. Then the stage of retirement, when people in ancient times retired to a forest. Nowadays we retire to a retirement homes. So that was called vanaprastha ashrama. Vana means a forest. And the last stage of life they considered as a stage, the hermit stage, the sannyasa ashrama. So in Indian tradition, they spoke about 4 stages. The concept of 7 stages, or 7 ways, or 7 parts human life can be divided, came mostly from Greek philosophy. And somehow in those days, number 7 was considered special. There was something sacred about number 7, or something special about it. We see in Psalm 90, which is attributed to Moses, it is written, "Our days may come to 70 years or 80 if our strength endures. Yet the best of them are but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away." So again, the 7 number comes even there. Of course, nowadays, even 70 or 80 in those ancient times was a pretty big number. The average human lifespan was much smaller than that. And of course, today, it's much larger. So some of these things, some of the numbers or the way the human life gets divided or characterized may seem amusing to us today because things have changed. Look at this, for instance. The Jewish philosopher Philo of Alexandria writes in his work titled On Creation, and this is how he divides it. He says, Hippocrates, the physician, says that there are 7 ages of man: infancy, childhood, boyhood, youth, manhood, middle age, old age. And these 2 are measured by periods of 7, though not in the same order. And he speaks thus: "In the nature of man there are 7 seasons, which men call ages, infancy, childhood, boyhood, and the rest. He is an infant till he reaches his 7th year, the age of the shedding of his teeth. He is a child till he arrives at the age of puberty, which takes place in 14 years. He is a boy till his beard begins to grow, and that time is the end of a third period of 7 years. He is a youth till the completion of the growth of his whole body, which coincides with the fourth 7 years. Then he is a man till he reaches his 49th year, or 7 times 7 periods. He is a middle-aged man till he is 56, or 8 times 7 years old, and after that he is an old man. Okay, so this was the way they try to again characterize the different stages. And as I said, some of these things might appear very amusing to us today because our way of thinking, our way of characterizing these different stages of life is different. And that's kind of understandable. And so, because of such a sanctity of the number 7, the same philosopher, Philo, he says that is why Moses wrote of the creation of the world in 7 stages. So somehow people seem to connect the number 7 to some of these things which are kind of come down to us through tradition. In medieval philosophy as well, 7 was considered an important number. For example, they spoke about the 7 deadly sins. Now, those of us who are interested in numerology might find a lot of things. There are things about 7 and number 9 and 8 and 4 and so on. It's just, I don't know what profound significance these numbers have, except that it's just an interesting study. But more than the stages of life or how we divide human life, what is of greater interest are these other lines in Shakespeare's writing. When he says, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances." Now, there is a lot to unpack here. That looking upon our present identity as a role that we are playing, and that it is not our true identity, this has profound implications of how we see ourselves, who we are, what our understanding is of who we are, and how strongly we cling to that identity. Because I was thinking just this morning, the thought came to my mind, if we know that something is going to be with us for a shorter time, and something is going to be with us all the time, which would we take greater care of? And one rather silly example came to my mind is someone gave us, say, 2 smartphones, and said, "This one is yours forever. No one will ever take it away from you. This is going to be with you all the time. This other one, you can use it, but it can be taken away from you anytime. And so it's not really yours. And you don't even know how long you have it." So if that's the condition, then which of these 2 phones will take greater care of? I think not so much the other one, because it's not, first of all, yours. You don't even know how long you have it. But the other one, which is going to be with you for a long time, you're going to take a greater care of it, pay greater attention to it. And so we look at our own identity, and suppose we feel that this identity is just for a time. It's not my real identity. The real identity is what will never change, will always be with me. Then if that earlier example makes sense, then it would make sure that probably we'll pay greater attention to what our like a real, permanent, true identity is. And that's the reason why this analogy of looking upon the whole thing being some kind of a cosmic play is interesting. In Vedanta students, of course, we see that among the different parts of our personality that we have, there is the body, there is the mind, and then there is the Atman. This is generally how we try to understand human personality as a threefold, 3 layers. And of these three layers, we see that the body and mind, are changing, are perishable, and are the outer layers. The innermost layer, the spirit, the Atman, that's without birth, without death. It's eternal. And that's our true identity. That's how the Vedanta texts point out. Now, of these two, body and mind, the body is, of course, we have to take care of it because that's in which we live all through our lives. The mind, in every birth, if you believe in rebirth, every birth we get a new body, but you don't get a new mind. The mind is going to be with us life after life. The mind that we have now has been the mind with us in our previous lives as well. And so, while we have to take care of both body and mind, if we must prioritize between the two, we probably should be taking even greater care of the mind because that phone is going to be with us for a much longer time. And that's the way of thinking it goes. And so let's reflect a little bit on this idea of this cosmic play, that everything that we are the different roles that we are playing. So there is this incident in the life of Girish Chandra Ghosh, a disciple of Ramakrishna, who was one of the greatest dramatists in Bengal during Ramakrishna's time. So he's a writer, an actor, an amazing personality. So in one of the plays, he was playing the role of a drunkard. And the scene required that he abuse a woman, another one character in that play. And he did that. It's a villainous character that he was playing. And he did it so well that one person from the audience was so enraged at this horrible, offensive behavior of that character. So this person gets up, takes his shoes and hurls it at Girish Chandra Ghosh. And just hits him and just rebounds on the stage. And then Girish just stopped. He picked up that shoe and then again touched his head with it and said, throughout his acting career, he said, this is the greatest award that I have got. That when you are acting and you are so true to life that you are able to move and stir the emotions of the people who are watching the play, that they are affected so profoundly by it. And so that's for an actor, that's a great achievement in some ways, to make the acting appear real. And so it's possible to think that whatever role we are playing in life, that maybe it's some big cosmic play that's going on. And whatever stage we are in, whichever character we are playing, it's only a character. But what happens is that actors who act on plays, you can go to Broadway or any of the theater district here, some beautiful plays staged, that once the play ends, the actors recover their identity. They go back home and they just become who they really are. And so if this is a cosmic play, and if this is only a role that we are playing, the question becomes, first of all, when did this play start? And when will it end? And the honest answer to that is, we really don't know. We don't know when it started, but we know how it can end. Death doesn't end the play, because if you believe in afterlife, in heaven or hell, well, that would be a different role. You would be playing a different role in heaven or hell. A role in a hell would be quite a painful play, and a role in heaven would be comedy or whatever way you want to make of it. But the play doesn't end, and the play will end when we are no longer acting. Now that's where the problem is, We don't know when the play began. It's possible that in the beginning we were just watching the play, but at some point we stopped being a part of the audience. We stopped being spectators. We became the actors on the stage. And we can see that happening sometimes when you watch really a good movie or watching a good acted play and well-directed play. In the beginning, you know, of course, that you are going to watch a play or going to watch a movie. But once the story starts, and then you get so absorbed into the story, and you begin identifying with what's happening on the stage, to the point like that's what happened in Girish Chandra Ghosh's case. The audience really got up, one of the persons, and then he threw that shoe. Similarly, once we get identified with what's happening, then we may even for a while forget that we are watching the play. And sometimes we may start identifying maybe with the protagonist or some particular character in that play, and our emotions might change, and depending on what happens to that the character in the play. To some extent, this is what happens even when we go to sleep and start dreaming. Because when we start dreaming, we are really watching what's happening in the dream. But we really don't see what's happening in a dream for too long. Maybe, I don't even know how long that stage remains as a spectator of the dream world, because very soon, unbeknownst to us, among the different people that we see in our dreams, we somehow zero in on one person in that dream world and somehow identify with that person to such an extent and say, that's me. And so we are still watching what's happening in the dream world, but we are paying special attention to that one person in that dream who I see is me. Now, if that person goes and maybe goes on top of the Himalayas, and then next morning I get up and said, last night I dreamt, and in my dream, I went on top of the Himalayas. Not true. I was sleeping in my bed. I couldn't have gone to the Himalayas. I saw someone in my dream go on top of the Himalayas. I identified with that person. I thought that is me. And that next morning when I'm narrating my dream, I just say, I did it in the dream. So that shift from watching a dream to being a part of the dream occurs so naturally every night. In the same way, this is what has happened to us in life. That when this cosmic creation, and this is in a way, a perfect play, because the producer and director is God. So of course it's going to be very interesting and very absorbing. And at some point, we stopped watching the play, and then we became a part of it. And that's where our present situation is. So we know that as long as we keep on being good actors, then we are just going to continue playing the role. I mean, that's the hallmark of a good actor. So if sometimes if a scene requires that character shed tears, and then there are some actors who get so immersed in the role that they are playing, they identify with the character that they are playing, that for that duration of the play, they forget their true identity. And they are so identified with that character. So if that character is supposed to cry, these people are able to cry naturally, real tears. They don't have to smear glycerine under their eyes to pretend that they are crying. But a bad actor who's having there's no reason for that actor to cry, who never forgets his or her true identity. He says, no, tears are not coming, and then they'll have to put some artificial tears to make it look. Of course, the rest of us who are watching may never realize that. But that's the hallmark of a good actor, that forgetting one's true identity and being immersed in that role. And now, if we look upon this cosmic play, then maybe all of us have become such good actors that this play is on and we have forgotten who we really are and have gotten completely identified with this role. And so we know that if those who are good actors will keep on getting more and more roles. They will never go out of job because people like it. They are wonderful. The only way to get out of this acting business is to become bad actors. And so the challenge, and think about it now, keep your Vedantic understanding at the back of this, that if my true identity is that I'm this Atman who is infinite, pure, and perfect in every way, when I'm putting on this human cloak over me and now moving about like a human being, as long as I'm good at it, as long as I've even forgotten who I really am and become immersed myself completely into this human role, I'm a good actor. And I have to continue in this way. The only way I can get out, when people are bad actors and then nobody likes them, people don't go to watch their movies or don't go to see the plays, then the director says, no, okay, we don't need you anymore, we'll find somebody else. So how can I become a bad actor in life? Oddly enough, being bad actor is more difficult than being a good actor in this way of thinking. I mean, think about it this way. If you are normally a good writer in English, and if someone says, write one entire paragraph with every word misspelled, you're going to take a longer time doing that than spelling. If you already have bad spelling, then you'll probably do it quickly. But if you... So being a bad actor is more tough. And so the only way I can be a bad actor is to then remind myself of who I really am. Stop being... The only way to be divine is to stop being human. We can't be both at the same time. I think most of us probably will have no problem saying, of course I want to have a vision of God. Of course I want to be spiritual. Of course I want to do all this. And then if we are told, okay, you can get all of that, but you have to let go of what you have now, that becomes a problem. Not wanting something divine and spiritual, but that in order to get that, I have to let go of things that I have. And if I'm so identified with it, so clinging to it, then that becomes difficult. It's a little bit like saying, I want to continue dreaming, but I also want to get up and have my ice cream. You can't have both. If you want to wake up and have your ice cream, your dream has to end. You can't do it in both ways. And that's why Sri Ramakrishna says in his conversations, if a boiled paddy grain is sown, it doesn't sprout. Just so, if a person is boiled by the fire of knowledge, he cannot take part in anymore in the play of creation. So getting boiled in the fire of knowledge. And that's the way our false or temporary, illusory identity has to go. The Gita says in that the fire of knowledge burns, just like fire burns away everything that is put into it. So this fire of knowledge burns away everything that is a product of ignorance. Because just as light and darkness cannot stay together, cannot go together, knowledge and ignorance cannot go together. So if my present problem has occurred due to ignorance, and that is ignorance of my true nature, then the only way that ignorance can go away is by the knowledge of my true nature. And right now, that knowledge seems to be covered by ignorance. And all that I need to do is to remove. So all of the spiritual practices that we do, whichever form they take, whether it's a form of a prayer, a worship, meditation, karma yoga, selfless service, study, whichever way we practice our spirituality, the purpose behind that is to then recover our lost identity. And once that identity is received, that revealed, then this false I will go away. But it just won't go away by default. Sometimes I think that sometimes we might know something intellectually or believe something, but it may not go deep enough for it to transform our life. For instance, just this belief in the idea of rebirth. Now, there is really no proof or evidence for rebirth, just as there is no proof or evidence for one birth. Whether it's one birth or many births, the truth is, nobody really knows. But this is a way of thinking. Life for us might make sense in this thinking about just one birth, or life might make in a different way sense to some other people thinking about many births. There are pluses and minuses in both ways of thinking. So sometimes I think that those who believe in the possibility of rebirth, and if it has sunk deep enough, then that gives one more reason to not cling too much to some of the identities of this birth. Because some of these identities we have now are really only for this birth. They will not persist in the next birth. For instance, now my human identity. It's not necessary that if I am reborn again, I will again necessarily come in a human body. So should I cling to my human identity? That if it's possible for me to be reborn as any of these living creatures, how much should I cling to my human identity? Gender identity. Whatever gender we identify with, it's not necessary that in the next birth again I'll be in the same gender. So how much should I cling to my gender identity? Similarly, most of the other identities that we have connected with our nationality, our culture, our race, our color, our class, all of these different identities are only for this life. And this will change depending on the new play or a new role I'll be playing in my future birth. And at some point, therefore, a thinking person might say that, sure, all these different roles and different possibilities are there, but when all the makeup is removed and all these clothes required for particular roles are removed, who am I inside? Who am I really? Now, that answer can be given in a theistic way, and we can think in terms of God the Father, God the Mother, that I'm a child of God. And one might think that that identity, that I'm a child of God, I'm a servant of God, I'm a part of the divine, that will not change irrespective of whichever way or whichever role I'm playing, I still can be a child of God. In a more philosophical way, one can think in terms of what is my identity beyond the body and mind? Did I exist before I was born? What is birth? Considering that we celebrate our birthdays, and essentially that's the time when this body came into being. So acquiring a body is really what birth is. And when this body becomes non-functional, no longer does what it does, stops breathing, stops being aware of anything, we say that's death. So birth and death are directly related to the body, which itself is very perishable. But who is inside the body? Inside the body is the mind and then the Atman. And it is this mind and the Atman then may acquire another body, and that's what rebirth is. But the mind itself also is just a subtle body. And because it is subtle, it lasts much longer than the physical body. But even inside the mind is the real me. Now that real me, the more I remind myself of that real me, the less effective I will be in my role as a human being. And so, in some ways, in a good way, people who become more and more aware of their connection with the divine, of their spiritual identity, for some time may kind of become a little bit of misfits into the world in which we are. If we are too much concerned about being a misfit, then of course nobody wants to be a misfit. Who would want to be a misfit? There is a story about a yogi who wanted to do very intense spiritual practices. And so he went and started doing meditating and spending time in solitude. And people around in that neighborhood noticed, oh, here is a holy person doing all. So they started coming, visiting this yogi, bringing him food and seeking his blessings, coming to him with his problems. And after some time, this yogi thought, I wanted solitude. And now all these people are coming and I don't have the quiet that I want because I want to devote myself fully to the divine. I don't want all this people coming and distracting me. But no matter, he went deeper into the forest, everybody followed him there. And so he was just like striving, wanting for some peace and solitude. So he goes to a saint and then says, this is what I have been wanting. I just want, let everybody leave me alone so that I can then devote myself entirely to God. But it's not happening. What shall I do? And then this saint said, okay, I think I know the way. So you go and there is this one cave and you go and start meditating there and I'll make sure that nobody will come and disturb you. He says, put a few bones outside your cave and I will kind of spread the word in the village that you have been just become a cannibal, that you have been eating anything and everything that comes. I mean, if by chance any people come anywhere near there, you just come out of the cave with stones and start throwing stones at them, etc. And then people will stop. Nobody will then come. And this yogi was like, no, I can't do that. People will think I'm crazy. People will think I'm insane. I can't do that. And then this saint says, oh, so you are worried about what people may think about you. Then you can never have peace. So what I'm really saying is, not that you misfit in a bad sense, but at some point, the more one gets identified with the divine, then what we normally might consider socially or culturally a kind of a normal life, that may not be exactly the way we thought it would be. There would be at least some stage in life when one will feel, I don't really belong here. And we see that in the life of many of these saints and mystics. For a while, people thought there's something wrong with them. Ramakrishna, for a long time, people thought he's just crazy. He's just talking. I mean, he was talking to the Divine Mother and he was seeing the vision of the Mother and he was speaking to the Mother. But the people around saw nothing. So they thought he's just talking to himself. When people start talking to themselves, then you think they're wrong. Something is wrong there. And nowadays, because the small earpods that have come, sometimes you see people walking on the road, they just seem talking. And I thought, who is he talking to? And then I saw he had this, maybe having some a phone conversation with someone. So today we may not be so surprised if people start talking because we just first check their ears, whether what they are doing. But Ramakrishna didn't have any earpods, but he was talking. And so people thought something is wrong. But as I said, it's a stage in life. But the same person, even today, decades later now, we worship him, we meditate him. He's such an inspiration to people everywhere. And so, being a bad actor would involve sometimes not being accepted by everyone around you. Then we might, and then if we care for that much, then of course, then we would want to adjust. So one of the things that in Eric Fromm's book, Escape from Freedom, he speaks about social conformism, conforming to what society expects of us. In itself, there is nothing bad or wrong about it. But sometimes, if let's say, if it's time for my meditation, it's time for my prayer, and at the same time, there is certain expectation that my friends expect me to go and spend time with them. And we face such situations in life. Those of us who have our personal prayer, meditation practice, but we also have other commitments, other expectations of people around us. And sometimes there can be a conflict. Should I be doing this or should I do that? If I don't go there, what will my friends think of me? What will they say if I don't do what needs to be done? And so these are the kind of dilemmas and choices we have to face in life. And we make our choices. Sometimes we say, no, this is more important to me. They will understand, or I don't care even if they don't understand. Or sometimes we say, no, let me try to take care of that. I will try to do this sometime else. And we just have to juggle these different responsibilities that we have, the different expectations that different people in our lives have of us. And usually, the way we take decisions in these matters would make clear to us what our own priorities in life are. What is more important to me? And so these are some of the, and there are no easy answers. I'm not saying you should do this or you shouldn't do this, but these are the kind of questions and dilemmas people face. But the principle here is that whatever role I'm playing and whatever dilemmas are associated with that, the more I think of this real, true identity within me, then my priorities in life might change. Things that appeared very important or non-negotiable may no longer be as important or non-negotiable. Other things which I didn't care for before might become important in life. And then this happens all the time. With age, with circumstances, our priorities do keep on changing. So if we look upon ourselves as spiritual seekers, it's helpful to then say, what role does God have in my life? Among the different priorities I have in life, if I make a list of all these important things in my life, where is spiritual life? Where is God? How important it is? And one would think that the test of making progress in spiritual life would be somehow things that are connected with my spiritual identity would keep on going higher and higher on my priority list. And so it's helpful either to make that list mentally, or if it helps you just to do it on paper and keep that paper private. You don't have to show it to anybody. But it's good to have an idea about how much you see. And the simple fact is this. The time and energy that we have are limited. Just as all of us, we have budgets for this thing. Financially, we are usually very responsible. We know how much financial resources we have. We know which places these need to be spent. And then we prioritize that this is more important, I'm going to use my resources there. But just as there are financial resources, there are also other resources. Resources as time as a resource, energy, physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy, intellectual energy. These are also resources. And so, where am I going to use the time and energy in my life, considering that both are not only limited, but both are diminishing resources? Every day can be a day of celebration, but every day, I know no one wants to think this way, but still I'm going to say it. Every day is one day become less from my life. Someone said, death is not an event. Death is only a completion of a process. The process really starts the moment we are born. The moment we are born, we have already started marching towards our death. And we don't even know how many more steps we have to take because we don't know when it is going to come. So it is not only a limited resource, time and energy, but it's also a constantly diminishing resource. With that in mind, one has to say where and how I'm going to employ this resource. If I'm serious about spiritual life, then it would make sense that I would keep a good chunk of my time and energy for things related to my spiritual progress, which will take care not only of these next few years in this life, but of life eternal. So all of these things come to mind when we start thinking about, I don't know whether Shakespeare was thinking about all of this. Maybe he might have been, but today when we read, and with our background as students of Vedanta, when we read something like this, many different ideas come. And so it's helpful so don't think that reflection about life, reflection about Vedanta can come only through reading the Gita or the Upanishads. Of course, they are very helpful to study. But even through reading fiction or watching a movie or watching a play, if we have this background, even looking at these, even fictional characters, it's still possible they provide enough fodder for us to reflect on these deeper realities of life. So I would leave you with this question. Ask yourself how good an actor you are or how bad an actor you want to be in this cosmic play as human beings. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu.